Joining me now is Dr. Dirac Twidwell, the Working Lands for Wildlife Science Advisor and an Associate Professor at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Dr. Twidwell, thanks for being here. The Great Plains is really the last continuous grasslands left on Earth. Why is this ecosystem so important? Why is it so important to preserve it?
Great Plains has some of the most large and intact continuous grasslands remaining on the planet, but grasslands overall on Earth are actually some of the most at risk of any major vegetation type. So in fact, it's so prominent historically, it's not just, most people think of grasslands, they think of like a landscape or something at that scale. Grasslands were such a prominent feature on Earth that they're a biome. So the Great Plains was a grassland biome, meaning it spanned from Canada all the way down into the Texas-Mexico border. And really what we're tracking is the collapse of a biome or the death of a biome. We're watching where, due to historical land use conversion, coupled with today the expansion of woody plants into that biome, we're really only down to about 16% of our biome that's escaped those two pressures. So that's what we have left, 16%. And just sinking that in, that means it's such a rare resource today that it's kind of an all hands on deck to, can we conserve some of the last remaining large and intact grasslands of North America? And that's going to be critical, because how we achieve grassland conservation will be our contribution to really global grassland conservation efforts, one of the most underappreciated and really misunderstood and taken for granted vegetation types on the planet.
There's a lot of working lands in among those grasslands. Why is it important to include those in the measures, in the grassland measurements?
Grasslands across the planet are strongly tied to private lands, and also they have a strong indigenous tie or indigenous history for a lot of them. Here in the Great Plains, we're talking in general 95 to 97% privately owned land. So it's really important when you're talking about working lands. Ranchers, for example, are the dominant landowner for grasslands. They're, of course, trying to sustain profits, have this intergenerational culture that's so important to the ranching identity. And we ask ranchers to do a lot. Not only do they make money on that land, but how we manage rangeland and ranchers on those areas, we're asking them to help with sustainability of water resources. In Nebraska, under the Sandhills Prairie, we've got the Ogallala Aquifer. And so a lot of people don't think that ranchers help manage that water resource. If it's not that, they help prevent wildfire disasters from increasing in the Great Plains by preventing the expansion of volatile woody fuels. So those are just a couple of examples of working lands is where it starts and ends with our Great Plains biome. It's dominated by ranching culture, and we're asking them to do so much other things besides just profit on their land that we benefit from elsewhere in the Great Plains states.
So talk about the strategy among all those groups, agency, landowners, and scientists like yourselves, in an overall strategy that you call defending the core. What is that, and what does it mean?
Yeah, so defending the core, it really started with discussions that I was having with Shelley Kelly with Sandhills Task Force, and where it's like, look, given the expansion and the collapse of a biome, we should really take a county and in the Sandhills and create a core area and show how easier it could be to manage encroachment. So what we used to do, based on some of our science guidance in the past, was we would wait until you get heavy infestation woody plants, remove it, but then it comes back because of the seed that's in the seed bank and seedlings and so forth. So it comes back, and you get the not so funny joke from Texas that they would say, if we sold the ranch 3 times to pay brush management. And there was just something that we missed in the science on it. We missed how this encroachment or invasion process happens through reproduction. So 95% of cedar recruitment happens within 2 football fields of a seed source. Well, we can manage football fields. So because of that, we're like, well, wait a minute, what if we had a core area that wasn't exposed to the threat everywhere? As you go south, what you notice is there's always a seed source everywhere you look. So the reason we didn't have woody encroachment everywhere is because we didn't have seed sources everywhere. And we have new data showing that that's the best predictor of encroachment is proximity to a seed source. Not rainfall, not other factors, proximity to, of course, the threat or exposure to the threat. So defend the core is really just about, we have to retrain our minds instead of reacting to the problem after we lose production, lose a number of other ecosystem services we don't want, and it's super expensive and hard to get back. Let's actually keep what we want intact and focus on that. And then we can grow that core area once you're anchored to something stable. That's really what the mantra defend the core meant. And what's cool about this is just how we should manage invasions, all invasions as we go forward. So the same kind of mentality is being used for cheatgrass out west, because that's their similar impossible threat in rangelands. So it's these broader biome threats. You can't just manage it by yourself. It's beyond just an individual. You've got to really work as a community at larger scales and defend these larger scale landscapes, because once you start losing them, no group's successfully shown how to get them back at those scales.
What resources are available through this science to help landowners determine which method is best for managing these horribly invasive woody species?
What we were able to come up with through some various collaborations with other land grant institutions is we came up with a new science guide on just how to think of this in terms of risk management. So how do you reduce your risk to encroachment? And there's a whole series of steps and guidance and things to look for so that people can start getting ahead on that issue, instead of just reacting to a problem, treating a problem, and having to do that perpetually. So we call it the vulnerability guide. It's just a guide to reduce that risk and vulnerability to encroachment. And in addition, we've got online data and web-based data that we're going to come out with hopefully later this year, that actually everyone can see what key metrics like production losses to woody encroachment for every county in every state where we have rangelands, early warning signals of loss, and understanding the risks of inaction long term. So they can start to see really how this trend is playing out. And the science will empower any citizen, producer, agency support person and professional to be able to take what we see in the science and apply it for their operation or their partnerships.
This has been so fascinating to learn about all this information. Dr. Twidwell, thanks for all you do. Thanks for continuing to bring the science to this problem so that we can make a plan. Really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for the industry and their support and so forth. So I really appreciate you all coming out.
It takes a village to kill a tree, right? To learn more about assistance available to help protect and improve working grasslands, contact your local USDA service center or visit the website nrcs.usda.gov.